we welcome now from far away, but close to us, always, Veronica di Geronimo. We introduced her yesterday because she's involved in many aspects of this project, at the forefront of this project. But she's also today in another, she comes today to talk as a PhD at the Beijing University, besides being junior scientist at the Fine Arts Academy of Rome for the European Projects of Oral Differences. She got a BA in Art History and MA in Contemporary Art History at Rome University La Sapienza. She has been visiting students abroad, and she worked in the communication department of the Rome National Gallery of Modern and Contemporary Art. Her PhD research focuses on globalization phenomenon related to Chinese contemporary art. And today she's gonna talk about, we go from embodiment to imagery and culture symbols, how they are embodied in the artwork, this time of a Chinese artist, Liu Peng. And we welcome Veronica.
Thank you, Elena. It seems that I'm not able to share, but to turn off my camera. You can hear me, right?
Yes, absolutely. Do we want?
And you also see my screen, right?
Yes, yes, fabulous. It's
okay. It's just my face is not okay. So. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, peers, and thank you for the introduction and for giving me the stage to present you the artistic research of a Chinese artist whose work are very interesting because related to a transcultural strategy for visual art. Indeed, what I'm going to show you is deeply rooted in today's dynamic world, and more in particular in Chinese visual cultural context of the post-opening up reform. At that time, during the 90s, China experienced a real moment, a true moment of xenophilia. And borders seems to blur and also visual culture intervene. And in this context, that Liu Peng masterfully merged the aesthetic of the East with the Western figurative culture. During my presentation, I will delve deep into the artist's method of melding different iconographies, offering you a glimpse into how Liu Peng reimagines and reforms symbols to create harmonious and still intriguing narrative. To this extent, we will explore the broader phenomenon of the iconography reinvention as a bridge between culture, which is very peculiar for the Chinese visual artist. Before beginning, let me explain where these studies come from. I follow the work of Liu Peng since 2019, when I met him in Beijing for the first time for an interview that was part of my master's thesis. Then I published an article on the Italian journal Engramma. For that number, the journal issues dedicated to the topic of the evidence in art history scholarship, I wrote about the difficulties to reach a full understanding of the other cultures. On that occasion, I mainly focused on the layout and iconography of the artist who is inspired and influenced by Italian art of the 15th and 16th centuries. Now I propose a further development of this research, which is still a work in progress study. So forgive me if I'm not going to detail. We will regard the use of some specific symbol and often repeated in his work. And I'm referring to the chessboard, mirrors, and apples. Well, let's start with few biographical notes of the artist. Liu Peng was born in 1967 in Beijing, where he currently lives and works as a teacher and artist. He began his professional journey at Capital Normal University, where he specialized in Gongbi painting. That is a technique, a traditional technique that aims at capturing details in a very descriptive and realistic manner. Then in 2007, he got a PhD in traditional painting. And while continuing to master Chinese traditional techniques and tools, he owed his fame to the Chinese version of pop surrealism. It is in this trend that the art critic and art historian Peng has framed his work, making a comparison with the American scene of the 90s and the lowbrow culture of the West Coast of the United States, which propose a very colorful artworks with popular and folk details. Let's see an example of how he mash up iconographies. Li Xianting, who is a famous art critic, mainly known in the West to have been collaborating with Achille Bonito Oliva for the Venice Biennial of 1993, when Chinese artists were exhibited for the first time at that Venice, and also probably known mainly for being the scholar, the art critic who proposed to art movement, as it known in Western pop, political pop and cynical realism. Well, these scholars wrote about Liu Peng, games of peeling up culture fragments, suggesting the scenario in which different cultures are being accumulated, mixed and stuck together, literally and metaphorically. It refers to a process where artists pick up aspects from different visual culture and juxtapose it, layering one in top of the other. In this case, the picture you can see frame the wall of the Forbidden City at the bottom of the screen, and also a very popular image at the center of the wall, The Last Samurai movie. And at the top of the wall, there is on the left side a little figure of Michael Jackson. On the upside of the painting, there are animals and people with clothes belonging to the Chinese tradition. As mentioned, Liu Peng is interesting case because that does not only readapt iconography, but also recontextualize pattern. And in the following example, the painting conceal not only the final appearance, but also variation of the same theme. Delving in a more accurate investigation of the work, I propose you a very fascinating picture. The work is called Salute or Tribute to Mr. Caravaggio. It was realized in 2013 and exemplified the manner in which Liu Peng operates. The compositional layout of the Vatican deposition has been applied to a new scene, which, although identical in the layout, is different in nature. The angle of the base and the view from below remain spatial solution almost unchanged from Caravaggio painting. However, the emotional tension, I would say, of the original disappear in favor of the attraction of the character for the underground. They look in a very curious way toward the underground. Let's have a look in a particular at one of the particular character, the man holding the lamp. This figure belonged to the local religious tradition. Dressed in a military uniform, he represents one of the guardians that were usually placed on the wall of the temples to protect Buddhist places. The inclusion of the mentioned iconography, that in Chinese literally means dur deities, denote that the artist's abilities to select iconography and different sources, potentially semantically coherent, to build new unified narrative arrangement. Speaking of arrangement, let me show you a different artwork realized few years before. In 2012, the artist participated for the first time in Italy at the Italian Chinese Biennial, organized at the Royal Palace of Monza with the artistic direction of Sandro Orlandi. It is interesting that few months before the exhibition opening, the curator pointed out some affinities between some of his paintings and those of Giambattista Tiepolo, Tiziano, Correggio e Guercino. I quote from the letter that the curator, Sandro Orlandi, sent to Liu Peng. I analyzed your painting and I found some strong similarities with the painter of the Italian Renaissance. I do not know how much you may be inspired by Italian painting of the 16th century. Although Orlandi was not referring to any of the work we are being analyzed at the moment, in which the references are specific and declared, he noticed that from the eyes of a Western audience, some of Liu Peng's work might trigger references and suggestion. The painting display on that occasion was Rainbow, that you see in this slide, an arc made up of inebriated and disheveled figure that stand out against a sky in the central area and a dance with clouds and sides, similar in nature to many presentations that fill the vault of the 16th and 17th century. There are many other examples where the artist captured in Renaissance scene architecture to make structures suitable for his subject. In the biennium 2013-2014, the influence of the Italian art became more direct and programmatic. He select, copy, repropose pattern, varying standardization and solution of the religious scene. In the painting reading period 3 and 4, it is possible to recognize the spatial layout typical of the Annunciation with the appearance of beam of the light from the window. In both cases, the light is the main subject of the painting, that in both cases are naked women whose faces are covered by a red book. Out of context figures are elements that enrich the scene. It would be totally misleading to seek relevance in the small dinosaur or the man portrayed. The dinosaur was in this painting. And the man painted on the roll attached to the black wall. The artist indeed declared that no logical connection exists between this and the main character of the painting. The artwork consists of two moments, and that's one of the material I gathered in the first interview. The realization of the scheme and the feeling it was filled with secondary images. In the first phases, the artist used some references book. He deals with formulating the layouts on the works, and then in the second moment, he filled the figures and images by spontaneity. And among the symbols of this secondary moment of his artistic method that are curious symbol, interesting because are figurative, bearing meaning in both visual cultures, Chinese and Western. As you may have noticed, the red book that the artists often use to cover the face of the characters is another repeating trope in his painting. And I will not focus now on this aspect because the conversation will now move in another direction that is more coherent with the oblivion of the Chinese character, but this is another different topic of Chinese contemporary art. So let's move to see the mirrors. That is one of the tropes that is quite recurrent in his painting. According to Chinese sources, primary sources. Mirror, ancient mirror, are supposed to have a magic power to protect their own from evil. They are believed to make hidden spirits visible and to reveal the secret of future. And I suggest you here to see the detail of these two paintings. In both cases, there is no real mirroring image between what is in front of the mirror and what is reflected on it. Indeed, it is an iconographic trope which in bicultural discourse acquire new meaning. The mirror indeed became a special potential symbol encapsulating the dualities, reflection and juxtaposition inherent in navigating two cultures concurrently. Just as a mirror reflects the image presented to it, bicultural individuals often find themselves reflecting and adapting to the cultural norm and expectation environment they habit. This duality leads to reach multifaceted identities, and these individuals traverse interweaving elements from both culture narrative. Thus, the mirror can also reveal fragmentation and dissonance. And the mirror reflections sometimes reveal disparities or contradiction between the two cultures. It is a very common tropic also in the cultural Chinese traditional literature. Beyond mirrors, there are also other symbols concealed in this painting. Here is reading period 1. There is trace of synthesis of iconography related to the same subject. In this case, the artist does not merely use an existing pattern, but seems to shape a representation superimposing multiple sources. Here, Liu Peng depicts a group of 3 men engaged in an intellectual gathering among scrolls and books. One of the sides are 2 female figures. On the right, a sculptured body with a semi-covered veil on the lower part. And on the left, a woman dressed in traditional qipao, the clothes. The arrangement of this character and their stare call to mind canonical work with a similar setting and atmosphere. I'm referring to the School of Athens, but this beyond the School of Athens, the arrangement of the 3 men, 2 standing and 1 sitting, find a valid reference to Giorgione, 3 philosophers. A further evidence of the artistic ability to mix and mash up iconography can be provided by the apple you can see in the hand of one of the 3 philosophers. In this case, the apple has been used for the shape, for the spheric shape. But beyond this, is it quite interesting to see that apple in Chinese traditional culture is a symbol for peace. From the Dictionary of Chinese Symbol, I quote, "Even today, apples are relatively dear and therefore an acceptable gift, especially since the apple, Peng, can stand for a symbol for peace, Peng. On the other hand, one should not give the apple to an invalid, since our Chinese word for illness, Peng, is very similar in sound to the word for the apple." Here is a game not only from peeling up visual cultural fragments, but also a game related to the phoneme of the word. Indeed, they share a very clear assonance between apple and peace. I would conclude my presentation with a very evocative and provocative also painting that show another symbol that Liu Peng recurrently adopts in his painting, and I'm referring this time to the chessboard. Here it is pretty clear the reference of the Last Supper, but in this case, Liu Peng called the painting party. Party as a celebration, but also party as a political party. And here we can see the chess as a political strategy of configuration. Thank you for listening. And I'm here to answer to all your questions.